In this election season, Katchatheevu Island is in headlines. What is its history and geography? RBI at 90. What all you should know about it? And why is it important to read about solar observatory at Kodaikanal? Hello everyone, I am Manas Srivastava and I am here with the 3 must reads from the Indian Express today. मैं हर बार ये बात कहता हूँ कि इलेक्शन सीजन में न्यूज़पेपर या वेबसाइट विल टॉक अबाउट इलेक्शंस, पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज, पॉलिटिकल पर्सनालिटीज. इन्हीं न्यूज के बीच में कुछ ऐसे इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्ट्स और इंफॉर्मेशन निकल के आएंगे जो कि आपको जनरल नॉलेज और करंट अफेयर्स से रिलेटेड काफी कुछ मटेरियल दे सकते हैं. ऐसे ही एक न्यूज है which is the first pick for me today. The first pick for me today is from the front page, and this news is also there when you go to the pages which talk about Decision 2024. This is about Katchatheevu Island and the South Watch. It's written why Katchatheevu, a speck of an island, is causing a splash in Tamil Nadu pole waters. Now, there is definitely politics here in the sense that political news it is, and you will see the political parties exchanging views, comments and messages around this particular topic. But then from the perspective of general knowledge, current affairs, your exams, you should know what is the history and geography behind this particular island. So I have some facts which you should keep in mind. The source is again Indian Express ka some archive article. So what is where? सबसे पहला question जो होना चाहिए that where is the island of Katchatheevu? So it is a 285-acre uninhabited speck in the Spark Strait between Sri Lanka and India. It is no more than 1.6 kilometer in length and slightly over 300 meter wide at its broadest point. It lies northeast of Rameshwaram, about 33 kilometers from Indian coast. It is about 62 kilometers southwest of Jaffna at the northern tip of Sri Lanka, and 24 kilometers away from the inhabited Delft Island, which belongs to Sri Lanka. The only structure on the island is an early 20th century Catholic shrine, St. Anthony's Church. So this is something important which you should keep in mind. During an annual festival, Christian priests from both India and Sri Lanka conduct the service with devotees from both India and Sri Lanka making the pilgrimage. In 2023, 2,500 Indians made the journey to this island from Rameshwaram for the festival. Important point to note is that this island is not suited for permanent settlement and there is no source of drinking water on the island. Now, this is definitely an archived article, last year's article of the Indian Express, where you get a lot of information about this island. Now, this is the geography or environment perspective thing here. But when you come to the island's history, it becomes very important. So, history क्या है? History में सबसे important point है that being the product of a 14th century volcanic eruption, this island is relatively new in geological time scale. So we go very, to a back date to understand the history of it. In the early medieval period, it was controlled by the Jaffna Kingdom of Sri Lanka. In the 17th century, control passed to Ramnath Zamindari based out of Ramanathapuram, about 55 kilometers northwest of Rameshwaram. It became part of the Madras Presidency during the British Raj. But in 1921, both India and Sri Lanka at the time British colonies claimed Katchatheevu in order to determine fishing boundaries. A survey marked this island in Sri Lanka, but a British delegation from India challenged this, citing ownership of the island by the Ramnath Kingdom. Now, this dispute was not settled until 1974. Now, this is also a very important part of the history because कभी-कभी हम recent history पे focus करते हैं, but when you go a little more back, you'll get more historical relevance there. Now, what is the agreement now that is important? Agreement now is, as per this archive article, what was the, according to the recent history, what is the agreement? So, in 1974, Indira Gandhi made attempts to settle the maritime border between India and Sri Lanka once and for all. As part of the settlement known as the Indo-Sri Lanka Maritime Agreement, Indira Gandhi ceded this island to Sri Lanka At the time, she thought the island had little strategic value and that seizing India's claim over the island would deepen its ties with its southern neighbor. Moreover, as per the agreement, Indian fishermen were still allowed to access this island. Unfortunately, the issue of fishing rights was not ironed out by the agreement. Sri Lanka interpreted India's fishermen's right to access this island to be limited to, and it's in quotes, rest, drying nets, and for visit or to the Catholic shrine without visa. So this is a bit of history. You should also know what is the current development. That is also very important to know what has happened in the recent years. How has the story developed? And of course, this topic will come up again and again as we move on with the elections. Okay, so remember this from the perspective of purely your general knowledge, your current affairs, and your history of this particular island. And of course, the relation between India and Sri Lanka is at focus here. Now, my second pick from today comes from the explained page. When I go to explained page, there is this very important article on RBI at 90, snapshots from history, and written by George Matthew. Now, RBI is an institution, of course, from the perspective of economy, you have to understand the current affairs part of it, its daily current affairs part. But since it says RBI at 90, it's an important year. So we should know a little bit about its history too. Now, look at the first 2-3 paragraphs, which are very important. And then I'll tell you what and how you should read this particular explainer. So the first paragraph says that the RBI, which was established on April 1, 1935, is responsible for the monetary stability, currency management, inflation targeting, regulating the banking system, and settling interest rates. The central bank story of the last 90 years includes ups and downs, but has generally been one of the stellar achievement. Now, what are the early years of RBI? ये भी आपको समझ में आना चाहिए. Legislation to set up the Reserve Bank of India was enacted in March 1934, and the provision relating to the constitution of the bank, issue of share capital, and establishment of central and local boards became operative from January 1, 1935. ठीक है, तो ये तो आपको कुछ डेट्स की हिस्ट्री देता है, इनिशियल जो उसके डेट्स हैं, इंपॉर्टेंट डेट्स हैं. But then when you come to the second paragraph, you get some very important names. And these names are, the first governor of the RBI was the Australian Sir Osborne Arkell Smith, one of the 2 managing governors of the Imperial Bank of India. Then you have Sir C.D. Deshmukh, was the first Indian to become governor. Now, following partition, it was agreed that the RBI would cease to be the currency authority for Pakistan and Indian notes would cease to be legal tender in Pakistan. The RBI's relationship with the government has been testy at times, but the bank has been steadfast in defending its turfs whenever the government has tried to interfere. So, ये जो एक context है, right, historical context, and then it tells you about its relationship with the government. Now, when I talk about the relationship with the government, you would also like to know some important, in the history of RBI, some important stages. Okay, and this is what this article is covering, and it talks about various RBI governors. It talks about vis-a-vis the government, and then some important landmarks in the RBI history. Some of them, which I'll just I've noted down for you. You should just make a note that you mark it in your explainer, this article. So, acute economic crisis in 1990. Then you have the reforms of 1991. Then there's another 2008 crisis. Then plans to internationalize the rupee. Then demonetization of 2016. Then monetary policy committee. Insolvency and bankruptcy code, this is IBC, and UPI or digitization of payments. So there have been so many things which you should just mark it and read a little bit about it. Maybe there can be questions in your prelims-based examination or objective examination, or maybe you are able to write some mains-oriented answers. Also, another important point which I think I want to bring to your notice is the names of various governors here. So generally in some competitive exams, especially when you're appearing for banking and others, these becomes important. But I was just wondering कि कहीं match the column बना के कौन से governor के समय कौन सा important step लिया गया, banking में RBI द्वारा. So that can be asked. Okay, so that can be an interesting question. Some of the names of the governors which are mentioned are I.G. Patel, Manmohan Singh, D. Subbarao, Y.V. Reddy, Raghuram Rajan, Urjit Patel, and the present Governor Shaktikant Das. So these are certain names vis-a-vis, you have to read it with the important steps taken during their times, and this is going to help you in understanding the history of RBI, but also in terms of economy. This is important. Now let's understand the third important, the must read. And as I said, there are many important news to be covered in the newspaper today, but my pick today is Kodaikanal 125 years ago, which is written by Anjali Marar. Again, the reason is that it mixes history with science and technology, okay? Because as the title says, how India's first solar observatory was set up in Kodaikanal 125 years ago. Okay, तो मैंने कल भी बोला था कि whenever there is 125 years, 100 years, 50 years, 75 years, these years become very important. The first two paragraphs are, since ancient times, seafarers, mathematicians, astronomers, and physicists have studied the science. In 1792, the British East India Company established the Madras Observatory, a first of its kind facility in this part of the world, where early solar and other astronomical observation in India began. On April 1, 1889, it was merged with Kodaikanal Solar Physics Observatory, and it then became the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory, which is KOSO, which has been operational for 125 years. ठीक है, तो ये जो दो पैराग्राफ्स हैं वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट सेट करता है, आपको ब्रीफ में एक हिस्ट्री बता देता है, एंड देन व्हेन यू मूव ऑन you'll get to know about some very important names, some very important both for your prelims examination and others. For example, Charles Smith. Then you have Lord Wheelock, who was the governor of Madras. Then, of course, Bhavnagar telescope. Then, of course, there is another white light active region monitor. This is called WORM. These are important names. These are important keywords which you should know that with reference to this particular article and news. So try to read it. Try to mark them. Note down in your notes. Now, there's also sunspot periodicity. Now, sunspot periodicity एक term यहाँ पे mention है, and it's given, the definition is given in the brackets. Please pay attention to it. It is under the heading why Kodaikanal was chosen. So based on evidence that sunspot periodicity, which is a solar cycle of 11 years when the sun's activity can be at maxima or minima. Okay, so this is in reference to the history. They are saying that there was a great drought in South India, and then which led to coming up of this Kodaikanal solar observatory. So uska ek jo reason diya hai of this great drought was evidences of sunspot periodicity. This can be asked separately in an exam. Okay, so not directly relevant, but indirectly it's very important. So such terms should be underlined and you should write down in your notes. Okay, so kai baar articles ke beech mein you get such important information, and that's the point of coming every day and telling you that what are your must reads from the Indian Express. You'll find such important facts and analysis from other articles. So what are your must reads from the Indian Express today? Write to me at manas.srivastava@indianexpress.com. That's all from me today. Think smart, work hard, conquer your goal. Bye-bye.